Olá, está no ar o STJ Entrevista, um programa do Superior Tribunal de Justiça. Aqui recebemos especialistas e autoridades para debater assuntos relevantes nos campos jurídico e acadêmico, bem como no cotidiano da população. Em junho de 2026, o Superior Tribunal de Justiça sediou o Congresso Internacional Estado de Direito e Ética Judicial. O evento reuniu presidentes de cortes supremas, ministros, magistrados, especialistas e representantes de organismos internacionais para discutir temas que estão no centro dos desafios das democracias contemporâneas, como a inteligência artificial, igualdade de gênero, combate à corrupção, transparência e independência judicial e a defesa do Estado de Direito. Entre os convidados está Rudolf Mellinghoff, uma das principais referências internacionais em integridade judicial e ética na magistratura. Mellinghoff foi juiz do Tribunal Constitucional Federal da Alemanha e presidente do Tribunal Fiscal Federal Alemão, duas das mais importantes instituições do sistema de justiça do país. Atualmente faz parte do Grupo de Integridade Judicial, organismo internacional responsável pela elaboração dos princípios de Bangalore, considerados a principal referência mundial em ética judicial. Nesta edição do STJ Entrevista, vamos falar sobre ética judicial, integridade, democracia, confiança pública e os desafios enfrentados pelo Poder Judiciário em tempos de transformação digital e mudanças sociais. Vem comigo conferir como foi essa conversa. Professor Rudolf, first of all, we'd like to thank you for joining us on STJ Interview. It's a pleasure having you here.
Thank you very much.
What are the Bangalore principles?
You know, in the United UN Convention on Human Rights, every person has the right of a fair and public trial before an independent and impartial court. Therefore, you have to look who is doing this work, and that's always justices. And to have independent and fair justices, we have the Bangalore Principles, which state 6 core values addressed first of all to the judiciary, but also to the state and to the public. And these 6 values are independence, impartiality, integrity, propriety, equality, competence, and diligence. And these are universal values which go back to far laws and which are common all over the world, and they are addressed to all justices to look at this.
When did these principles come about, and also who formulated them?
In the 1990s, lots of justices saw that there is a lot of corruption in the world, and Nihal Wikrima, who had been a famous lawyer of Sri Lanka, was at that time at Transparency International. And he started to think about what to do against corruption. And then he gathered 4 Asian judges and 4 African judges to think about what can we do against it. And they sat together and formed the Judicial Integrity Group, as it was later named. And they met first in Vienna at the UNODC, and then later they met in Bangalore and did the first draft of the Bangalore Principles. And this draft was done by these 8 judges from Asia and Africa, and they found out these Bangalore Principles that were at that moment only for common law people should be broadened to all justices in the world. And so they thought how to do this. And with the help of the United Nations and the United Kingdom, who financed that, they met in Den Haag. In Den Haag, where is the International Court of Justice, and they sat together with quite a lot of judges from the civil law countries. There was also a Brazilian judge at that time there who was in that conference. And then they discussed how the principles should be formulated to apply to all judiciaries in the world. And that was the birth of the Bangalore Principles of Judicial Conduct and the Judicial Integrity Group, who since then looked after these principles. And then it went further on, And it went to the Economic and Social Council of the United Nations, and they adopted it and said, these are the gold standards which every state should apply and implement these Bangalore principles of judicial conduct.
And what are the importance of these principles, not only for the judicial systems, but also when we're talking about democracy, Professor?
Yeah, you must see that a democracy can't be without the rule of law. And if you want to have the rule of law, you need independent justices. But it's difficult to have only a code of conduct for justices. That is not enough. You must have principles, and the Bangalore principles of judicial conduct, which first of all addresses the conduct of the justices, but also addresses the parliament, the lawyers, the administration, and so on, to have a common understanding what is justice for in a democratic state. And at least it's for the public too, because people must have trust into the judiciary. If the people don't have trust in the judiciary, it's not worthwhile. So the Bangalore principles of judicial conduct have, a broad way to look at how the judicial system is working.
And the Bangalore principles are now over 20 years old, right? Are there any developments necessary to do right now?
Yeah, I think, first of all, I would say we don't have only the principles, just the 6.1. We have also a commentary, which is 135 or something pages long. So, first of all, we have to think what has changed in the past 20 years. And there are a few things we have to think about. First of all, the gender issue. Mm-hmm. That is really something that changed over the last 20 years, and it is somehow addressed in the value equality. And the second thing is social media. At the time when the Bangalore principles were drafted, nobody had social media. Mm-hmm. So it's totally different nowadays, not only for the justices themselves, but also for the courts, for the judiciary, should they use it. And then the third thing, which is quite new, I would say 3 or 4 years, that's Gen AI. That is really something to think about, whether you should have a new principle of a human decision, not a machine decision, but a human decision, which is very important, because if you look back 2 years ago, nobody would have thought that you would have whole libraries in the AI and just ask them and you get something out of it. And the fourth thing we are thinking about in the Judicial Integrity Group is the value of courage. Nowadays, the justice systems are really under pressure. And you must help the judges and give them the values, what they have to do in these situations. We have nowadays, especially in Europe, the multi-level judicial system, so probably you have to look to change a little bit there or to adapt things. But I would say the 6 core values, independence, impartiality, integrity, propriety, equality, competence, and diligence, they should stay as they are. And the only thing I'm thinking about is whether to have a 7th value of the human decision.
So it's possible to keep using them, but we need to update to the new reality, right? Yeah,
because you must know these 6 values are very open and very, how to say, not very precise on things. So you must help justices to understand it, and therefore you have a commentary where you have examples and cases and so on to look at and see what should be done there.
Perfect. Professor, and regarding judges and courts, how can they ensure that these principles are widely adopted they have a specific role on this?
Yes. You must know that the Judicial Integrity Group not only wrote the principles and the commentary, they also wrote the implementation measures and the dissemination measures. And in the implementation measures, there are tasks on the one hand side for the state, because he must ensure the independence of the judiciary, the salary must be good for the justices and so on, but also the justices themselves have an obligation. They must think in their own country under the specific circumstances they have in the country, like, for instance, Brazil, that they give themselves an ethical code which is orientated at the Bangalore principles and takes into account the national specialities. And also there are some advices what judges can also do by assignment of cases and how they come to the judges and who is responsible for things. So that all should be written in a code of conduct for the justices themselves, and they have the duty to do it.
Professor, you highlighted the challenges that social media has brought. In this scenario, how should judges balance their freedom of speech and the need to preserve judicial impartiality?
I think justices have the same freedom of speech as everyone has, but he has a duty of responsibility. And that's not a responsibility just on his own, it's a responsibility also to the court system, to the judiciary, to the public, what to write into social media or what not to write. So a certain justice could never put his meaning and his opinion on a certain case. Never, ever. That's not possible. If you are a private person, you can do that, but as a justice, you are not allowed to do that because that's inappropriate. So justices are free, but they have the responsibility more than other people because of their job.
Perfect. And Professor, how important is judicial integrity to the protection of democracy and the rule of law, especially in times of this political polarization that we're living?
I think the most important is, first of all, that the justice always looks that there is an equilibrium between the different positions that they are. A judge shouldn't expose himself politically. That is not the right thing to address the things. He should build bridges by the rule of law, but make on the other side clear if there is a breach of the human rights, that he stands firm on the side of the human rights, of the democracy, and of the rule of law.
Perfect. And what are the main ethical challenges that judges are facing?
I think the main challenges are, in a very diverse country, that they are blamed and that they are put into a position which makes them difficult to make a free and independent and impartial judgment. But he should know that if he becomes a judge, what is his duty to do in that situation.
And based on your experience, are there any best practices or any advices that can be adopted by courts that have particular success in promoting judicial integrity and ethics?
The judicial systems are quite different. For instance, you have the common law system. You become a judge only being before a lawyer, a barrister, and then you are elected to be a justice. In the civil law systems, very often in some countries, you become a judge just after finishing university. So these systems are totally different, and you must address the question of independence, impartiality, and integrity a little bit accustomed to the real situation you have in the judiciary. You have these 6 values, which are universal, but you must look, for instance, if you apply that in a long history, whether a judge is member of a party or not, you have in the whole world different systems. For instance, in the Swiss, the judges has always been member of a political party. In other countries, that would be unthinkable to do so. So I think you have these values, but you have also to see what is the society like, what is the constitution like, what is the democracy like, what is the rule of law in the country like. And you have a guideline there, and there are boundaries which you can't go over, and some autocratic states, they breach these boundaries, and you are not allowed to do that as a justice, whatever system you have there. But in democratic states, there is some kind of variety, so it's difficult to say you have one system which fits for all.
And Professor, what role does the judicial integrity play in maintaining public confidence in the courts?
You know, you have examples for that, for instance. We spoke with African judges who really began to sit in front of the court and spoke with the people and declared them the system, to try to get confidence in the judicial system. And also we had cases where we sent students into law courts just to look what's happening there. And that, for instance, a judge can't, get money or discuss with the party, if I do that, you give me that, or something like that. So there are transparency which you have to do, and then you have you have to have probably also some advisory boards or something like that. And then justices are accountable if they are corrupt. They are really accountable, and they even can go into prison because of that.
First, is there any final thoughts you would like to add about the subject?
I think the final thought is that's really an achievement that after a few years here in Brazil, we come together with justices all over the world, from the highest courts all over the world, and we discuss these problems in the light of the new developments. And that's very important, and that gives us the help to reformulate, to look what we have to do in the future, and to look on the new situations.
Professor, thank you very much for your interview. It was a pleasure having you here with us.
Thank you very much.
E esse foi o STJ Entrevista. Muito obrigado pela sua companhia, e eu aproveito para te convidar para conhecer o canal do STJ no YouTube, onde você encontra este e muitos outros conteúdos relevantes. Até a próxima. Tchau!